Hello everybody, here we are today talking about 5 teams that have had virtually zero playoff success over the past 5 years, and then getting into what their seasons could look like this year. So before we get started with it, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or hockey, whatever the case may be. That being said, let's get on into it. So the first team we're going to be talking about in this video is the Los Angeles Kings, and over the past 5 seasons, LA has made it to the playoffs 3 times, and looking at the past 3 years, those are the ones that they ended up making it, and they ended up getting knocked out every single year in the first round by who else other than the Edmonton Oilers. And looking at a team like Edmonton, they knocked out LA in 2022, where they would go on to the conference finals, and then they would do it again, of course, in 2023. But in 2024, they would go on to do it a third time and make it to the Stanley Cup Finals. So 2 out of the 3 years, LA has had to watch a team that they aren't particularly fond of go on deep runs, and they're trying to figure out what exactly they need to do to break through that barrier. Now, this year, they are one of those clubs that you're wondering if they're actually going to get it done. They've got some additions like Warren Fogle, Tanner Jeannot, and you are hoping with the extension of Quentin Byfield, maybe there's a little bit more confidence with this group as they try to get over the hump. You see guys like Turcotte, you see guys like Kempe as well that are younger players that have a lot of NHL experience at this point, honestly, and you are just trying to get the deal done. And for an LA fan base that is dealing with a lot of things over the past few years, including the always and never-ending goalie rotation, if we're being honest, they are hoping this year, even if it was a second-round appearance, that they could get there, because the Kings haven't really done a whole lot in a minute, and it's just the way it's going. Of course, 2012 and 2014 were nice, but 2014 is coming up on 10 years ago. Actually, it'll be over 10 years, and they want to see something different other than first-round exits, which, of course, have become the norm. And then you have the Minnesota Wild, and I feel like this team is probably the one you would expect to be on this list, because you've heard a lot about how they are just in a rut, really, for the past basically 10 years, if we're being honest with ourselves. And over the past 5 seasons, they've been able to make it to the playoffs 4 times, and they ended up losing in the qualifying round and then the first round each season after that. They have not made it to the second round since, I believe, the 2015 playoffs. So yes, it has been a minute, and I can't remember who ended up making this analogy. I'm sure multiple people have, but a lot of people are comparing them to the Toronto Maple Leafs, saying they are the new Toronto. Last year, they didn't even make it to the playoffs. This year, they'll look relatively similar, and they're going to try to bounce back after having an 87-point season. They got off to a slow start last year, so they're hoping with a healthier roster and maybe a bounce-back year for some certain players, they can try to get to the playoffs and actually do something for the first time since 2015. What's weird is Minnesota has fielded some great teams over the years, and they just haven't been able to get the job done. They've run into some issues where they've got younger guys that are trying to find their way in the playoffs, playing really good teams, things along those lines, as well as just being an outright underdog at times. But yeah, Minnesota fans haven't had a whole lot to cheer for in a bit, and they haven't been a true cup contender for a while now. And then you have the Nashville Predators, another team in the Central Division that has not been able to do much come playoff time. This team over the past 5 years has lost in the qualifying round and then in the first round, I believe, 3 times as well. So they're kind of in the same boat as Minnesota, except last year they actually made the playoffs thanks to a hot stretch, and they finished with 99 points on the year. They are actually one of the oldest teams in the league entering this season, but I do feel like out of this group, I feel relatively optimistic for them because of the fact they end up getting Jonathan Marchessault and Steven Stamkos, and then they do something like signing Juuse Saros to an 8-year extension. I think that this group, while old, feels relatively confident knowing that they know their place in the league and with this organization, and understand that Barry Trotz is committed to trying to win and win now. So looking at this Nashville club, yes, they haven't done anything since really their cup run. They ended up winning, I think, a postseason series the year after that. But I like this group, and I really am hoping that they can get to the playoffs and make some noise, because a lot of these fans of other teams might see players that they watched for themselves over the years with Stamkos and Marchessault and O'Reilly, etc., and see kind of some fond memories they saw with their players when they were on their teams, and hope for them and say, oh, this is a team that I could root for if my team gets knocked out of the playoffs. And then in recent years, with the Central kind of being ran by teams like Dallas and then, of course, Colorado, maybe you'd be a little bit more accepting of Nashville and say, well, they haven't really done a lot in over 5 years. I'm okay with them being good now. But if you're not a fan of Smashville and all their traditions and just how they operate as an organization, maybe this isn't going to be something for you. But yeah, maybe they get a playoff series win this year or more. Who knows? And then you have the Pittsburgh Penguins, a team that hasn't made the playoffs over the past 2 seasons and is a side that since 2018 hasn't won any postseason series. I guess in in 2018 they did advance to the second round, but looking at all of these things, there's not been a lot of action in Pittsburgh since they won the Cup in 2016 and 2017, and in recent years they feel like a team that's just kind of a guarantee to get knocked out in the first round if they even make it. This year, I'm interested to see what happens here as I see some positives. You're looking at the fact they've got Tristan Jarry and then Alex Nedeljkovic, and that is a good 1A, 1B tandem. Really, Jarry will be the starter. But I'm excited to see how these guys do, as you have Jarry, that I think ended up having a good season overall last year, and Nedeljkovic, it could be a very good backup for them, that with this tandem could be a big boost for the Pens. And on top of that as well, you have other big aspiration players like Erik Karlsson especially, hoping to have a big year. And then they have some underrated names like Kevin Hayes. Is he going to be a nice addition for the team this year? 2 years ago, he had a 50-plus point season with Philadelphia. They got Matt Grzelcyk on the blue line, and of course, they've got guys like Malkin, Crosby, the gang. You know, Sullivan's been there for a minute now. There's a lot of cohesion with this group because a lot of guys have played a lot of minutes together in a lot of games in a lot of years. Decades really at this point for some of them, but I don't exactly see as bright of a future for Pittsburgh. Maybe this year they'll be one of those teams is able to jump back into it and then make some noise, which would be good for the NHL as they have a lot of popular players on their roster, but we will see. And then to close it out, you have the Washington Capitals, and this is a team that since the 2018 Stanley Cup, I don't think has won a single postseason series, has been knocked out again over and over and over. This past year was a sweep against the New York Rangers where they barely clawed their way into the playoffs. But I think, maybe not on the scale of Nashville in terms of star power, but just so many things happening here where you can be excited for this team. I am eager to do Washington's season preview, but looking at this team, I think in part why I'm eager to do this season preview is a lot of the additions. Not all of them are stars, but you have a lot of underrated players like Matt Roy and Jermaine Giappani. They have a great tandem theoretically with Charlie Lindgren and then Logan Thompson. They brought in Jacob Chikrin. They ended up getting, who was it? Oh yes, Pierre-Luc Dubois, and I'm sure that I'm forgetting some other names as well here, but it was a busy offseason for the Washington Capitals. I can't guarantee that they're going to go out there and be a side that goes on to a conference final or anything like that, but they have a lot of new faces that are looking to prove themselves. Chikrin is looking to get a bag, I'm sure. They have other players that are younger on the roster like Sandin, Strome as well. They're trying to prove themselves again and get opportunities and to thrive. And I think for the Capitals, they are one of the funkier units in the league in terms of all the names that they have on this list, and with the expectations and just all these faces. I want to see Washington succeed because it feels so weird to look at this. It almost feels like a video game and you're like, my brother got a hold of my game and he just made one of the weirder rosters you can think of. But if Washington would go out there and have, let's say, a 102-point year, something like that, and then be a surprise upset in the first round and knock somebody out, it'd be fun. And that's kind of what this is all about, looking at these teams over the past 5 years and seeing what exactly could transpire this year. Some of these teams I don't really think are going to go out there and do a whole lot. And I know this could come back to get me, but I think especially a team like LA doesn't really scare me a whole lot in the coming years. Maybe they go on to advance in the playoffs around or something like that, but I don't see them being a legitimate threat in the coming years. Not even saying that these teams, any of them are going to go out there and win the Cup, but I'm hoping that all of them are able to get a turnaround and maybe win a round or two this season in the playoffs. But anyway, what are your thoughts on these teams and how do you think they'll do this coming year? Do you think that some of them will find playoff success? If so, who? Let me know down below in the comments. Also, please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe. Have a great night. And you go with hockey, all right? Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.